Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Right, we are cooking. The stove is on. The pots are boiling. The steak is sizzling. We are ready to go. I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. Man, my guest today, I'm so excited to chat with her and learn from her. And she is an absolute badass entrepreneur, a leader, marketing strategist, and thought leader, a lifelong passion for entrepreneurship, for marketing, and really values authentic connections and getting to know not only her team, her customers, and then her customers' customers, and just really understanding the person that's there, and then understanding how you can help them. And that is the basis of just powerful, legendary marketing. Can't wait to introduce you to her, founder and CEO of Magnitude Consulting, Natalie Nathanson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Man, so exciting. So exciting. And there's so much going on here. So without further ado, I almost lost it because some little hands had moved it. But let me pass you this thing. Ugh. Okay. Really heavy. Go ahead, grab Thor's hammer. Yeah, you got it?
Okay. I got it. You warned me it was heavy.
It is heavy. Oh my gosh. Take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
All right. You ready?
Yes.
Kaboom. We don't need no stinking marketing strategy because we just need leads.
Just need leads.
Just need leads. We don't need the plan. We don't need the strategy. And it drives me nutty.
Absolutely. I mean, why is this even a thing?
I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be going away. And I think the reason it drives me so nutty is that it's simply not true, right? Going through this without going through and generating leads without a plan is just risky. It continues that mindset that has the vicious cycle of wasting time and resources. And if you are successful, it's usually by accident.
Right.
And in my view, it's also what gives marketers a bad name.
So we know it's needed. We know it's the case, yet we want to just get to the action. Is it the outside influences that are jumping in and preventing it from occurring, or is it our own lack of discipline? Like, where does this come from?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. I think one is the sense that to develop the strategy, get the plan in place, that takes too long, and that plan ends up being detached from reality. And then I think the second thing is just a lack of an understanding of marketing. So I think it's those two forces working together, both of which are misconceptions.
Yeah, you're just smashing myth left and right. Like, you just take a Thor hammer, smash all over the place. Lack of understanding of marketing. So the idea, and let's tackle the first one, the idea that it takes too long to plan. I mean, how long does it really take?
I mean, I think I'll give one of those consultant answers of it depends. But I think, as we're often looking at planning, there's kind of an ideal way to do things, and then there's a pragmatic way of doing things. And I think when time is of the essence, and oftentimes when someone comes to you and says, we need leads, and, the underpinning of that is we need them now, there's a little bit of an element to take a quick step back before taking a step forward and going through at least some kind of rapid, pointed strategic thinking.
Yeah.
Really to making sure that all your resources are kind of pointed in the right direction, and that you're solving for the right thing. Even kind of generating leads, that can mean very different things to different people, different companies. So if nothing else, being clear on what that means.
Yeah, and I love how you say, solving for the right thing. How often do we try to solve problems that don't exist or are not even the right thing to focus on?
Yeah. I think that does happen far too often. I'm sure we've all seen it. And I do think, especially when it comes to B2B marketing, you could say the same thing, use different terms, and everyone comes out with their own understanding of what that means, and ending up in one of those scenarios where marketing's patting themselves on the back and saying, go us, we generated all the leads to meet the target we had set forth. Meanwhile, sales is twiddling their thumbs and kind of pointing their finger at marketing and saying, we don't have what we need. And so I think it's really an effort to avoid that. and also just really to look at the market and look at where the opportunity is, and again, kind of making sure that you're rallying all your resources in the right direction.
Yeah. The idea that even B2B marketing itself tells somebody one term and that, or even what is a lead, right? And
Hmm.
worst thing possible is if one group is celebrating and the other group is missing their number and not getting paid. And ooh, that's what puts marketing in a bad spot, is if we're totally disconnected from the reality of the other teams and also the company itself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so I'm with you. We gotta have a plan, right? We gotta have a plan. We gotta have a strategy. So how do we go about it the right way? Where do we
Yeah.
start?
So I think there's kind of a few steps to go through, and I think
Yeah.
there's a lot that can go into it. But put simply, really the first is kind of taking that quick step back and understanding the need. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second is going through some kind of rapid strategy and planning, getting to kind of what is that initial plan. And then third is really what we call informed execution. So it's execution, but making sure you have the right inputs in place.
I like it. Okay. So number one is we take a step back and we got to figure out what's need. What is the need? How do we do that?
Yeah, so I think again that goes back to first making sure you understand, what the business objectives are. That definition around kind of what is the a good lead, how many are we looking for, what kind, when do they get passed to sales, uh, where are the needs short term in the business, but also longer term, and in particular, if you're a small marketing team, uh, there's always an opportunity cost. So what do you need to drive in the short term to support the business, but also kind of where does your eye need to go for longer term objectives or other initiatives on the horizon that you need to start making some time for.
Got it. Powerful. Boom. Business objective. Good lead, bad lead, past sales, short term, long term. Got it. And then it comes time to plan, to actually do the planning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it one page? Is it 30? What does a good marketing plan, like, you look at it even at a glance and you're like, yep, they've got it going. Or can you even at a glance know that they've got a good marketing plan?
Yeah. So I think there's, as we've seen, there's tons of different formats and lengths of marketing plans. I think in this context of we need leads quickly, it shouldn't be kind of a 30-page plan or a 3-hour presentation to deliver kind of the strategic recommendations. I think much more practically. Um, first as part of that, understanding the need, understanding what assets you have at your disposal. Is there content to be that can be leveraged for the campaign? Are there the right foundations in place? So looking for any of those kinds of things that maybe do need to be happening in parallel with that planning effort, um, so that when you get to the point of being ready to execute, you're not then kind of starting to work through, do we have kind of our marketing automation system in a good place, all of those sorts of things. um, and then we often think about that rapid planning and really a company's go to market as three main components. We call it the three M's. There's the
Okay.
market, the message, and the mechanism. So, right, looking at the market, who do you serve? And that's both at the organizational level, kind of industry, behavioral profile, the personas or kind of job titles you're targeting, then dovetailing into the message. What do you say to them? How do you communicate the value of your solution, your differentiation in the market, all of those sorts of things. And then lastly is the mechanism, and that's really the tactics, right? Is it a LinkedIn campaign? Is it Google AdWords? Is it account based marketing? And I think that mechanism is where uh, a lot of folks are thinking when they think about marketing, but really needing to make sure that they have all those components covered and covered for that particular initiative. So, back to your question around, what should the plan look like? I think if it answers those three things, and it doesn't need to be, company wide, I think it's really for this particular initiative that you're looking to kind of generate leads for a particular kind of sales team or product team or whatnot. Uh, Making sure that you have all of those areas addressed, and that can be as simple as a couple slides and making sure everyone's aligned on you know what are the inputs, what's the focus, what are the kind of areas to deploy, and then what does success look like.
Wow, I love that. I wish success had an M word so I could say market, message, mechanism, and measurement, right?
Measurement. There you go.
Yeah.
I may have to borrow that one.
Do
You know,
it.
the
Let's
four
hear it.
M's. We were just joking on the team that we use a lot of M analogies, and it's not deliberate, but pulling from magnitude
Oh, see, that ties in
from our
perfect. I was
company
going to
name.
try to make them N words for your name, but M words sound even better because magnitude, that's good branding. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could say that part was deliberate, but I can't take credit.
Right. Well, it's better than like Z words. You're like,
There you go. There's
okay,
a lot of M
measurement.
words.
Is it working? Right? Is it working? Are we able to see what are we able to see success? And also what's not working? But at least being able to see it's not working is great because you can stop doing it.
Right, right. Exactly.
I once bumped into a company before we started working with them, and they did something like 80 trade shows a year, which is a lot. And I know you're going to one later. And they did 80, but they had no idea which ones drove the right leads. Some of them did, but they had no idea which ones. And so they were kind of hostage to always doing those 80 events, and they would add some more, but they would never get rid of some because they never knew. So that's how they ended up at
Right.
80 because they had like 20 and they did 21. But what if that was the good one? Oh, 22. And they just, and so man, setting up a little measurement saved them millions.
Yeah, yeah,
Crazy.
definitely. It's a good point, right? If you don't know what's working, you don't know what you can take out.
Yeah.
So you really need that analysis, and that is the beauty of so much of marketing these days is that it is digital and you can measure it, and uh, not just a particular tactic, but see kind of how the combination of tactics are working together.
Yeah. 100%. And I even want to get into events in a little bit, but before we do that, let's talk informed execution. That sounds really, I don't know, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds
So I
good.
think again, when you have kind of even that rapid planning, you're executing with the right kind of strategic inputs in mind. And one thing I'll say is that that execution can be in parallel with developing the plan, right? Ideally, you're kind of taking that time and
Yeah.
putting together the strategy and then rolling into execution. Typically, companies are moving a mile a minute, especially these days, and we often do have a need to be working in parallel. So oftentimes, as we're working through that strategy, we're starting with what we know, and we have a parallel track of execution that might be kind of high priority or kind of urgent needs. It might be hypotheses based on what we think will work, getting some of those kind of quick early pilot campaigns in place and out the door, and those further to inform the strategy. And you have some initial indicators of what's working, and then when you're moving into full execution mode, that's the informed execution, right? You've done the planning, you may have some initial campaign results under your belt, and now you can, put more fuel in the fire, whether that's expanding on a certain tactic, putting more money into a paid ads program, launching kind of new tactics or more tactics.
Adjust it. Don't be stuck in the mud, right? What's that whole quote of, the plan doesn't survive contact with the enemy. As soon as you start executing your plan to the point of doing it in parallel, you might find out this is an absolute terrible idea. Let's switch over here.
Right, right. Well, and that's why the plans, while it's critical to plan and to have that strategy in place, it can't be in a vacuum, and it needs to be kind of agile and flexible. And I think long gone are the days of putting together a 12-month roadmap and then kind of executing, 1 month at a time until you get to the end. There's just too much changing, and that's
Too
both
much.
in marketing, in the market. We look at the world around us, and if we were having this conversation 2 months ago or 2 months from now, I'm sure a lot of what we're all thinking about would look different.
Yeah, man. So speaking of which, the world changing and we talked about events a little bit here and there. What are you seeing? Are we going back to events? Are there any marketing events that I should check out? Anything you're excited about going to and recommend?
Yeah, so I do see events coming back. I was having an interesting conversation with some people about this earlier in the week. I personally don't think they will or should come back to what they were, but I think, like many things through the pandemic, this is a chance to really reimagine events. I think what we've learned is There's nothing that replaces that in-person, face-to-face time.
100%.
But I do think, right, the scenario that you described of, we're going to 80 events, we don't know which ones are working, what should we do more of, what should we do less of. Um, I think the events that are much more targeted to a particular kind of sector or role, or making sure people are there for the right reasons and not to check the box or because they've gone in years past. Um, I think there's different ways to be thinking about events, and even this was maybe over 6 months ago. So when we were still in kind of more of the thick of the pandemic, we do a lot of work in healthcare IT. We had a client at HIMSS, one of the big kind of healthcare IT conferences, and they'd been going every year. This past year, the numbers they said were much smaller, but people were there for the right reasons. There wasn't as much of people kind of walking the trade show floor just looking for the free swag and getting their badge scanned and all of that. The people that were there because they had an active need, or they came with specific things they were looking to solve or to network around. And that's what I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it got to a point where we were just kind of blowing events out of the water. I remember walked around some events and I would just, pick up doodads for my kids back home, right? Like, oh, a unicorn? Oh, that's gonna be money. I'm getting that for my daughter, and I'll hit unsubscribe on Monday.
Yeah.
I don't even know who the vendor was, and it's like you can make giveaways too good. In which case, you're not getting who you wanted to. I mean, I guess that's part of that game, but and that was always such an inefficient game to play.
Right. It is. And it goes back to where we started the conversation earlier around leads and the quality of leads. It's great to say that, you got 100 leads at your trade show booth, but if 90 of those are people that just wanted the free cool unicorn, that means that your marketing team, your sales team have that many more leads to kind of nurture or sift through, and ones that never kind of had any intent of purchasing or kind of an authentic need to engage with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any particular marketing events that you recommend for marketers, or
You
you
know,
really go toward your industry? Is that really what?
yeah, we go much more to industry. So I personally, and I'm a big believer of peer learning. So for me, that's other business owners. So I'm a member of WPO, Women Presidents Organization, and EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which I know you know.
Yeah.
So for me, those are the ones that personally I get the most out of, especially with so much changing in the business landscape
Yeah.
all the time. I'm much more of an avid podcast listener, so a lot of my marketing content consumption is through podcasts.
Tell me, do you have any favorites? Because that was really the next question was like, what kind of books are you reading, or what kind of places do you learn? Where do you
Oh
go to
yeah,
learn?
yeah. So that's probably a topic I could talk about all day. But
Yeah.
so I'm an avid listener of books and podcasts. I don't. I got 2 young kids at home, so I don't spend a lot of time kind of sitting quietly with a book and reading. But
Yeah.
I think as far as podcasts, my favorite marketing one, I'll exclude this one to be fair.
Oh, you can
Uh,
put it at the top if you want to.
all right,
That's
all right.
totally fine. Yeah.
This is number one.
Of course, of course.
Uh,
Also because we have the best guests.
the best guest, the best host.
Oh, well, yes, of course.
So marketing book podcast
Yep.
is definitely my favorite of those. I think of books. It's a mix of marketing and just kind of broader business books. So I don't know if you know Patrick Lencioni. He does a lot of the kind of storytelling through books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last one that I read was Getting Naked. It
What's
sounds
that
a
one
lot.
about?
So it sounds a lot more risque than it is. It's really about consulting and how do you kind of dig into the issues? How do you make sure that you're solving for what the client needs and not what they want? And that's something that really resonated with me because it's something that we kind of really instill in our team.
What was the explanation for the naked metaphor? Was there some kind of like, because that sounds like a great book title, it would sell. Then
Yep.
also, was it like naked consulting or what?
Yeah. I think it's disarming your audience,
Oh,
and
okay.
getting to a point where it's just very kind of real. So kind of like peeling back the onion, and at the end you get to that core, the kind of naked
I like that.
needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So marketing book podcast. Any other podcasts you like to listen to, even non-marketing ones?
Yeah, yeah. So my guilty pleasures. I love all of the serial podcasts. The most recent one I listened to was Trojan Horse Affair, which was
What's
very
it called?
interesting. Trojan Horse Affair.
Now, what season are they on now?
Oh, I think 4 or 5. I think they started separating the years from the kind of the series because I ended
Okay.
up listening to 2 in the last year.
See, I
Um,
love the first season, but I couldn't get into the second one. So I kind of got off the serial bandwagon. But it sounds like
oh,
they since had plenty more of good.
yeah, yeah. I would suggest jumping back into it. They
Okay.
had
I will.
Improvement Association, Nice White Parents, and then this Trojan Horse Affair, and all of them were interesting for different reasons.
Okay. Totally. Yeah, I really like that first season. Do you think he did it? Season one? Remember that one?
I do. What was it? Adnan? Was that his
Yeah,
name?
Adnan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I thought that he did.
Yeah, me too.
What did you think? Yeah.
I thought so too. They definitely were messing with us though. They had us go one way, then another, then one way, and it was like, what are we doing? But I think it was cell phones and also I can't remember what was the tipping point, but there were a couple points where I was like, oh, okay. Well, that
Yeah, yeah. For me too, that was the podcast that got me into kind of binge listening to podcasts. I think before that, I was a more sporadic listener.
yeah, and I guess the myth is that people don't listen for a long time, right? We only have like 3 minute attention span, but the 3 minute podcasts aren't nearly as listened to as like the Rogans of the world or any of those things. How long is Schaefer's the marketing book podcast? Did you say an
They're
hour?
about an hour an
Okay,
episode. Yeah, and each one, with given the name, covers kind of a different authors coming and talking about their book.
covers
And
the
what
book.
I like is that they really do get into enough depth that usually it ends up being little listen, get a taste, and then want to buy the book as well. But it's
Exactly.
enough that just listening to the episode in and of itself, you get a ton of value
You don't even need to
from
buy the
each
book.
chat.
Just listen to the episode.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it also, to bring it back to kind of marketing, we're thinking
Yeah.
about the kind of content. Like clearly, we both, like podcasts and kind of listen to content.
Yeah.
Um, my husband, for example, he can't listen. That's not how he consumes information.
Yeah,
He
my
reads.
wife's the same way. She likes to read.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So thinking about as marketers, we now need to create the video, the audio, the written content, the short form, the long form. It's a lot, but different people like to consume content differently, and it doesn't necessarily align as easily as we'd like to. The role that you're in or the job title you have. It's really much more kind of personality and lifestyle dependent.
What a great reminder to create the format that people want, right? How are they going to consume it? These people prefer listening. These people do not prefer listening. And so yeah, they give them the blog post, give them the white paper, the longer thing. Give these guys the video. It does
Yeah.
kind of make our job harder that we have to create now the same kind of content a couple different ways in order to have it consumed by who we need it to be consumed by.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly does. And content already, creating quality content is a heavy lift, and needing to kind of parse that out to all the different formats and then adjust for all the different stages of the buyer cycle. It's a big onus on marketers, but it's also the lifeblood of good marketing these days is you have to have the good content.
Yeah, right. It's like table stakes. You can't not have it anymore.
Right.
Just like you had to have a website. People they're like, oh, I don't need a website. Okay, now you do. And it's like now you need a blog, you need content, good content. And you can't just spam a bunch of words on a page.
Right, right. Which is interesting to start to think about of like what will be the next table stakes, right? And things that
Yeah.
companies are just now starting to take on. Uh,
What
yeah.
do you think? What's coming around the corner? What's changing?
So I think, through the pandemic, I think a lot of the digital laggards realized that the ones that were reliant on, solely in-person events or in-person selling and handshakes and all of that, had to kind of jump on the digital bandwagon. So while digital is nothing new, and many of us have been in that world for decades, um, I do think the expectation is now that kind of most companies or all companies are now kind of adopting and deploying that. It's also driving companies to be more kind of metrics and data driven. And I do think the notion of intent based kind of content and lead gen tools and that sort of thing uh, is maybe the next frontier.
Yeah.
Um, and that's good for everyone, I think, right? It's
Yeah.
allowing people to focus on the right contacts.
Yeah. I totally agree. Um, and I love that the change is, it's almost like it's bringing us back to selling the right way. Like we went so far out, we're doing these crazy things in tech and we just abused it all. Now it's bringing it back to the face to face, back to actually talking to your buyers.
Right, right. And talking to the people that want to talk to you, as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to kind of push your message out to an audience that maybe doesn't know you yet, doesn't have an active need for your solution. Because if you find the right people, everyone says this, it doesn't feel like selling, it feels like helping, and it's a productive conversation. And that's, I think, where anyone in a selling role in particular wants to be.
Right. 100%. That is totally the case. So, man, this is there. I'm almost running out of paper. This is fantastic. My next question really is like, who are you? Who are you? You running companies and marketing and all these things. Can you take me back in time, little Natalie days? Did you know you're going to be, running things and starting up things and advising people on strategy and all these plans and execution?
So I certainly did not. And I think one thing I always think about is that I was painfully shy as a child.
Really?
Yeah, to the point where if my parents were telling a story about me to friends and I was in the room, I would have to leave the room. But overall, I would say, had a great childhood. My parents were both professors of dentistry and of psychology, so that love of learning and curiosity was something that was instilled in me from the start. Um, my mother always said that she knew I would go into business. Somehow she conveniently failed to mention that to me. So I did have a number of different careers in mind before landing on where I was, and actually went through my whole undergrad without really knowing what marketing was.
Oh wow. Well, what'd you do for your undergrad?
I was a communications major,
Okay.
which makes it all the more ironic not to
Right.
have had any exposure to marketing. I think at that time, communications and PR and all of that was
Yeah. I
in
did
the.
comm too, and you're right.
Did
It's
you?
mostly like a little graphic design, some video, and then how to write a press release.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
it was PR, TV, film, but completely separate from marketing is in the business school. And
Yeah.
the two
Imagine
things were
that.
just kept totally separate.
So you did comm, and it seems like a good place to start, right? And what kind of got you into marketing?
So I got into marketing by chance. I was recently graduated, trying to figure out, like many people, what was I going to do with my communications degree.
Yeah.
My mother ended up sitting next to someone at a wedding who ran a two-person marketing consultancy. He was
Hmm.
looking for some additional hands on deck. I'd always been very much into the content side of things, so I thought about studying journalism and kind of started down that path in my undergrad. So when he heard that I could write, he said, please tell your daughter to call me. I didn't.
Right.
It took a couple rounds. Finally, I did, and that was actually my first exposure to freelance work because I started off in a freelance capacity. And this is sort of the early days of digital. I'm going to date myself here, right? But like the very first webinars, the email campaigns were new, all of that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and found that I loved it, and that marketing really combined the analytical thinking with the creative thinking, and just that the natural business drive, which I think I always had because I'd even started some ventures much earlier in my life, but didn't really have the foresight on how to connect those pieces.
Right. But what a cool opportunity to just try something out. And then find out, hey, actually, I like this works. And the content piece being such a key part of that. I think if anything, the com probably helped you with just even thinking about writing and presenting and a little bit of practice there so that you can be fresh out the door when it's time to do some marketing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, for sure.
Did any part of marketing really stand out to you as your favorite as you experienced all the different facets of it?
I really think it was the combination of being able to deploy a number of different skill sets together. I was doing some design, some writing, sending out campaigns, and then looking at the metrics. So it was really kind of that integrated approach that I think resonated with me. And I would say I have the personality type to get bored easily.
Yeah,
And I found that with marketing, you really never have an excuse to get bored because you're always kind of firing at multiple different cylinders. There's always more to learn. There's more to do. So it very much kind of aligned with just how I think and how I like to operate.
totally makes sense. So cool. And then, I mean, but then how does a company come about? How do you eventually make the shift from doing it to eventually growing this thing?
Yeah. So I think there were a couple things. I had been in a couple kind of corporate marketing roles. I had been a marketing team of one at a startup, trying to do kind of everything and anything and not necessarily having the expertise or resources to do justice to what was needed. Uh, I'd spent also 5 years at the analyst firm Forrester Research, and at the end of my time there was managing the marketing team that sold into the IT sector. So had experienced marketing from the internal side of things and had the small company experience, the bigger company kind of marketing department experience. And like I said, I had a few ventures earlier in life. I think I always had that entrepreneurial yearning,
Yeah,
uh, but am also very risk adverse. So
sure.
it took kind of a big leap of faith to go from kind of working for someone else to deciding to start my own company and working for myself. But um, now that I have, I don't think I could ever go back.
I found the same thing being the case of just what a fun, like, once you've been off to the races, it's like, ah, to pull me back into corporate world without this freedom and flexibility, it's just something else.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think, all the experience that I had in the internal marketing roles, that was really, where I saw the need to do things a bit differently and kind of brought all of that experience to start Magnitude.
Gotcha. Man, I love the name too, magnitude. So uh with that, let's talk a little bit more about, so now what you're doing actively with magnitude. Kind of tell us a little bit more about it and who are your ideal customers.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So we are a full service B2B tech marketing consultancy. Uh, we really position ourselves between a consulting firm, and a lot of our strategic offerings fall into that. Things like messaging, positioning, marketing planning. So a lot of this kind of rapid planning and kind of diving into execution. And then we have full service capabilities on the execution side, such that we can serve as a company's full marketing department when they don't have marketing in house, but oftentimes we're augmenting a small team or kind of helping to bring a new discipline to companies, larger firms. And we're focused on the tech sector. So B2B tech is kind of the umbrella under which we operate. Within that, we have a few areas of expertise and really kind of drink our own Kool-Aid. As we tell clients, you don't be all things to all people, but really figure where you want to focus. And then uh, that's where you should proactively invest in your sales and marketing efforts, and then your team, your offering, etc. So for us, the biggest industry focus was cybersecurity. Um, and we've been in that space for the last 8 years or so heavily.
So in the cybersecurity world, you want to get that message out, magnitude someone to talk to. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great space. Um, and it's, lots of companies in the market, so a lot of competition. So that need to really kind of be smart about those three M's: who's the market, what are the messages, and then what are the right mechanisms. Um, and we work with other market segments as well, like healthcare IT is another big one. Um, it's ones where the audience tends to be inherently skeptical of marketing, and so that need for kind of good content and being authentic, and kind of being targeted with kind of where you're focusing can make all the difference.
Well, I have kind of a hypothetical question for you next. Because see, I may or may not have a time machine in New Hampshire. It's actually in the backyard covered in a tarp. And so let's say you come visit, you get some beer, some lobster, and you get to use the time machine, and it goes back in time, and you get to meet yourself right after school, right after graduating from college, and you get to talk to yourself back then, that version of you. What kind of advice, what kind of recommendations, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I could probably sit and lecture myself all day long. Um, but I think some of the areas that come to mind, one is really trusting my gut, and having that kind of confidence and kind of internal swagger, that feeling that I have that this feels right, this feels wrong, that there's validity to that. And I think that's something that kind of increasingly over the years, even kind of still continue to emphasize for myself.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one, and this is more recent, is just being comfortable taking bigger risks. So, like I said, risk adverse entrepreneur. I know that's an oxymoron to some, but there's a balance of kind of being risk adverse, and then where do you need to take that leap of faith and really make those
Right.
investments, those key hires, those initiatives to go forward.
Yeah. Marketing is part of taking risks too, right? I don't know if this campaign is going to work out. Sure, it looks like it should. It may or may not. Or this event. I don't know if this event's going to work out, but let's make sure we do everything we can to make sure it do our best job of it. And then, if anything, just measure and find out and adjust and learn from ourselves.
Right, right, definitely. And I don't think there's quite enough of that in a lot of cultures of being able to kind of take your best yes, your hypothesis, that kind of informed planning, um, but be okay with the fact that sometimes it won't work, as well as that sometimes it'll take time to get something to work. And I think that lack of patience, to let kind of see a campaign or a tactic through, um, can also be kind of a downfall, because you run the risk of launching a campaign and it doesn't work right away, and someone says, that's it, this tactic doesn't work for us, when ultimately it could have been the execution, it could have been still needed more optimization, could have been the person that was implementing it that
Yeah.
didn't know all the nuances. And marketing is so uh so nuanced these days, and there's so many different skill sets that need to come together. It's much more complex than it's ever been.
It really continues to get more complex while at the same time, those core things you've the M's you've talked about, really, we can ground ourselves in the plan, and ground ourselves in the strategy. That way we're not being whiplashed all around, by every new tactic out there.
Right, right.
Man, so good. What are you doing for fun these days? If you ever have time when you're not marketing and running a business and all that.
Well, so especially now, springtime in the Boston area, loving the time outdoors.
Oh yeah.
So I'm a runner and newfound gardener. So definitely enjoying the warmer weather runs. They do beat the cold, dark winter ones.
Oh my gosh, your lungs aren't on fire,
Yeah.
with the dry, cold air.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And then gardening, I had a brown thumb up until the pandemic. It became a new hobby, and it's really enjoy it. It's
What are you growing?
I'm growing tomatoes, peppers, a lot of hot peppers. Big, big, spicy fan, and then
Really?
a whole host of different herbs, basil and three different kinds of basil and dill and all kinds of stuff.
There's 3 different kinds of basil?
There's tons of different kinds of basil. I don't know how many, but
I didn't
this
know
year,
that.
yeah, yeah. Lemon basil, vanilla basil, purple basil are the three that I have growing right now, and those don't include kind of the standard ones that you think of, like that you would put on a pizza or in a caprese salad.
No kidding. I feel like that's earth-shattering. There's different kinds of basil.
As my basil plants grow, I'll have to ship over some basil your way.
Yeah, totally. I'm a big fan. I just didn't realize there's that many different kinds. Interesting. And I wonder if you, like, crossbred them all, you'd, like, lose track of them. You get all different I'm looking at it now on, like, Amazon, there's, like, a million different kinds of seeds
Yep.
for that. Wow.
Yeah. And I think there's something, very rewarding about gardening. It's you put in the effort, you get something out on the other side. It's in some ways that's kind of the feeling you get in marketing, right? You put in the effort up front, and then you start to see the the output, and you've created something that didn't exist before. Um,
I love that metaphor. That makes total sense. Gardening like marketing. Maybe that's your future book right there.
I know. We just went through a company rebranding. I'm wondering if could have incorporated my love for gardening.
Yeah, and you have like a spade or something, You're just finding the leads, or like
Yep,
you're planting the leads and it grows into the revenue trees.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. I actually think my company's first website, we had one of those, the growth
Oh yeah.
visuals of like a little plant and it keeps growing.
Yeah. I mean, the metaphor really just ties in. That is really what the case is. Oh man. So good. Well, where can people, if they want to reach out, they want to contact you even professionally, or they want to talk to Magnitude and get some conversation? They're in that cybersecurity world maybe, and they want to reach out and get some help from you guys.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So Natalie Nathanson, I think there's only me and one other Natalie Nathanson, and she's a lawyer. So I'm the one that's the marketer.
Gotcha.
And then email Natalie@magnitudeconsulting.com.
Perfect. And people can just email you and they should say, "Hey, I heard you on the podcast," so that you have an understanding of how they met you. And especially if you're gonna send a LinkedIn invite, don't just randomly LinkedIn stalk someone. You get a lot of spam these days. So you gotta put a
Exactly.
message in there and say, "I saw you X, Y, and Z," or whatnot. And that way they accept your invite.
Yeah, yeah. Far too much spam on LinkedIn these days,
Oh my
unfortunately,
gosh,
but
so
I don't think
much.
it's going away anytime soon.
I know. You know what I do? I tend to respond to spam on LinkedIn with a pitch. I try to sell them a podcast.
Tell them right back.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, do you want a blah 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 consulting?" And I'm like, "Oh, do you have a podcast?"
Has it ever worked? Has it ever?
Uh, it feels great.
Yep, I
I
believe it.
don't. No one's bought one from that method, but I definitely have had people engage with me, which is, I just feels kind of fun too because I've taken them off topic. They're supposed.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I no, I've done that a bit too. We'll get kind of sales emails from, let's say, a cybersecurity company that we downloaded one of their content pieces, and then we have to say that we're not in your target market, but we do serve we serve your target
yeah,
market.
or something like, this email sucks. Maybe you need some help with your marketing. This thing is gonna convert anywhere. Like, come on, let's help you out. Maybe
Right.
not like that, but they
Yeah,
had just some
yeah.
bad marketing, and then you're like, hey,
Well, and I love that you do that because you never know where the conversation will lead,
true.
right? There's serendipity is always at play. And if nothing else, it probably stops them from sending you email after email.
They're like, oh, this guy's pitching me. Oh, I wonder why.
Guy's gonna
Um,
put me to work.
yeah, but technically, what I'm thinking in my head is, wow, you're doing LinkedIn spam. You need help with your marketing. You probably do need a podcast.
Right, right. Something more
Crazy.
targeted, giving people quality content.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of spamming people, please stop. It's crazy. Well, hey, this has been so good. Thank you for coming on here and schooling me and sharing just how you feel about things. And man, I've just got so much in here, the steps, the taking a step back, the planning, informed execution, the three, now four M's. So much stuff here. Thank you so much for sharing it all.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a fun conversation.
It has been fun, like more fun than you can possibly imagine on a Thursday. And I know we're gonna do some EO stuff later, so the fun will continue. But for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front and back over here, then share this with someone else. Be a thought leader. That is exactly the definition of thought leadership, is finding some great content like this conversation, like what Natalie was saying, and share this. Get this to another marketer. Get this to someone else, so that they can practice the 3/4 M's, and they can really think about informed execution. So we're not just marching in the wrong direction. Man, so good. Natalie, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, everybody. This has been another awesome episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.